The knock always comes at night. It comes when the streets are silent, and families believe they are safe behind locked doors. It comes when prayers are whispered instead of spoken aloud. It comes with urgency, with authority, with the understanding that everything is about to change. For centuries, across continents and cultures, that knock has marked the beginning of suffering for countless men, women, and children whose only offense was their faith. In the 1st century, under the rule of the Roman Empire, a small and growing group of believers refused to worship the emperor as divine. Their allegiance to a higher authority was seen not simply as a theological disagreement, but as an act of rebellion. When Rome burned in 64 AD, suspicion turned toward them. They were labeled dangerous, accused of disloyalty, blamed for disasters. What followed was not just punishment, but public spectacle. Arrests were made. Families were separated. Believers were humiliated and forced to choose between renouncing their faith or facing brutal consequences. The intention was clear: extinguish the movement by instilling fear. Yet something unexpected happened. The more pressure applied, the more resilient the faith became. Gatherings moved underground. Messages were carried in secret. Letters written from prison circulated among communities, strengthening resolve rather than weakening it. Faith, when stripped of comfort and social acceptance, became intensely personal. It was no longer tradition or routine. It was conviction. Centuries later, the pattern repeated itself in different forms. In 17th-century Japan, Christianity initially spread through missionaries and local converts. For a time, it flourished. But when authorities viewed foreign influence as a threat to national stability, a severe crackdown followed. Believers were forced to publicly deny their faith. Officials devised tests to expose hidden Christians, compelling suspected followers to step on sacred images as proof of renunciation. Refusal meant severe punishment. Communities were dismantled, leaders were imprisoned, and the faith was officially banned. But faith did not vanish. It adapted. Entire communities went underground for generations. Without clergy or formal churches, families preserved prayers orally. Sacred symbols were disguised within cultural art. Children were taught carefully, quietly, deliberately. For over 2 centuries, these hidden believers survived in secrecy. When Japan eventually reopened to the world, observers were astonished to discover that isolated communities had maintained their beliefs almost unchanged. Suppression had not destroyed them. It had driven them deeper, strengthening their internal bonds. In the 20th century, persecution took on new forms under totalitarian regimes that demanded ideological conformity. Religious leaders were detained. Houses of worship were demolished or repurposed. Sacred texts were confiscated. Faith was labeled as subversive, incompatible with the state's authority. In labor camps and prisons, believers faced grueling conditions designed to break the human spirit. Yet even in these harsh environments, prayer continued in whispers. Scriptures were memorized because written copies were forbidden. Bread was shared quietly in symbolic remembrance ceremonies. Acts of faith became acts of resistance. Persecution is not always dramatic or visible. Sometimes it operates through isolation and pressure rather than overt violence. It can manifest in legal restrictions that limit public worship, in surveillance that monitors private gatherings, in social discrimination that excludes believers from employment or education. In some regions today, individuals face imprisonment for unauthorized religious activities. In others, conversion from one faith to another brings rejection from family and community. The cost may not always be life-threatening, but it is deeply personal and profoundly disruptive. The psychological burden of persecution cannot be overstated. It isolates individuals from support networks. It instills fear that every conversation may be overheard, every gathering infiltrated. It pressures parents who worry about their children's safety. It forces painful choices between personal conviction and immediate security. The question arises repeatedly: why not simply abandon the belief that causes such hardship? For many who endure persecution, the answer lies in the nature of faith itself. To them, belief is not a superficial identity marker but a core reality that shapes their understanding of truth, purpose, and morality. Renouncing it would feel like denying their own conscience. History consistently reveals a powerful truth about human nature. When individuals are convinced of something deeply, coercion rarely produces genuine surrender. It may achieve outward compliance, but inward conviction often survives. Interestingly, research and historical observation suggest that persecution can strengthen communal bonds. Shared hardship fosters unity. External pressure clarifies identity. When faith is costly, it becomes intentional rather than inherited. Communities forced underground often develop strong networks of mutual support. They rely on one another not just spiritually but emotionally and materially. In such contexts, belief transforms from a cultural accessory into a lifeline. It is important to recognize that persecution for faith is not limited to one religious tradition. Across history, Jewish communities have faced expulsion and discrimination. Muslims in certain contexts have been targeted for their practices. Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, and others have endured hostility depending on political and cultural climates. The underlying issue is not merely theology. It is control. When governing powers perceive a belief system as a competing authority or a threat to unity, suppression often follows. Despite centuries of attempts to eradicate religious conviction, belief persists. It survives in whispered prayers, in memorized verses, in quiet acts of devotion. It reappears in places where it was thought to have been extinguished. The forms of persecution evolve with time. Ancient arenas become modern courtrooms. Public spectacles become bureaucratic restrictions. Physical force becomes social exclusion, but the central tension remains the same. Who has ultimate authority over the human conscience? Imagine once more the knock at the door. A parent glances at their children, aware that everything familiar may soon change. There is no dramatic music, no audience to applaud courage, only a decision. Comply outwardly and secure immediate safety, or remain steadfast and risk loss. Throughout history, countless individuals have faced that moment. Some chose survival through renunciation. Others chose to endure hardship rather than betray their convictions. Collectively, their stories form a continuous thread from ancient empires to modern societies. They challenge comfortable assumptions about faith as a private or optional matter. For many around the world, belief is neither trivial nor convenient. It carries consequences. It demands courage. It shapes identity at the deepest level. The knock still comes in various parts of the world today. It may not always be loud or violent. Sometimes it arrives as a legal notice, a workplace dismissal, a social boycott. But for those who experience it, the meaning is unmistakable. Their faith has become costly. And yet, across centuries, the pattern remains astonishingly consistent. Attempts to suppress belief rarely eliminate it. Instead, they often expose its depth. When stripped of privilege and protection, faith either fades or intensifies. For millions throughout history, it has intensified. The story of those persecuted for their faith is not merely a record of suffering. It is a testament to resilience. It is a reflection of humanity's enduring struggle between coercion and conscience. It asks a question that transcends religion itself. What is worth standing for when standing carries a price? For those who have faced prison, exile, discrimination, or isolation because of their beliefs, the answer has often been clear. Faith is not something they possess casually. It is something that possesses them. It informs their hope, their morality, their understanding of eternity. And because of that, it becomes non-negotiable. Empires have risen and fallen. Political systems have shifted. Laws have changed. Yet the quiet determination of individuals who refuse to abandon their convictions has outlasted them all. The fire that authorities attempted to extinguish has repeatedly found new fuel and courage, community, and unwavering belief. The knock may come at night. Fear may follow. But history demonstrates that courage, grounded in deeply held faith, has a remarkable endurance. Long after the echoes of boots fade and prison doors close, conviction remains. And in that persistence lies one of the most powerful stories humanity continues to tell then and now.